Okay, just to show you guys how easy it is to take this backhoe off, we're gonna turn on the rear hydraulics. We'll be using those. Alright, first thing we'll do is just extend the stick. Then we'll extend the boom. Not a great idea to walk around a hoe, right? Okay, we'll extend the boom all the way. We're gonna dump the bucket all the way. Set it on the ground. Okay? Now, back here, a couple pins we're gonna pull. Okay, now we got to unload those pins. So what we got to do is tilt it back this way. And so what we do is we push the boom down. We push the boom down, and what that'll do is push this way. And it unloads the pins here. That's wrong way. There we go. There's one pin. Here's the other. Ingenious design, right? They never fall out, and they're always tightening them themselves. Okay, now that that's free, the backhoes, that's all that holds this backhoe on the tractor, is those two pins. So now what we're going to do is reverse this. We're going to raise the boom. We're going to raise the boom so this right here will raise up like this, and these parts will pull out. Raise the boom, yeah. Okay, so until those are free right there. Okay, cool. Now we can go ahead and put the feet down. I'm going to put this one down over here to bring this off the tire. Square it up a little bit. Make sure that one's on the ground. Now we're going to use these feet here to raise the whole thing up right here. So we're going to push the feet down. What that's going to do is it's going to raise this pin back here, that pin right there, out of that slot. That one's already pretty much out. That one looks like it might still be in. So we're going to raise it up just a little bit here. Okay, now that's free. The backhoe's off. Just got to take the hydraulics off. So we're going to climb up here, turn off the hydraulic power to the rear here. Hot. Now, of course, taking it off is always easier than putting it on, right? Putting it on, you know, you got to get it pretty much lined up everywhere. Okay. And I try to wipe these off, clean them out a little bit just to try to prevent dirt from getting inside. Okay, that pin's free. that pin's high enough to be free of that, we're done. Going to pull forward here real carefully just to watch the cables, watch the hoses, make sure they don't catch on anything. Yeah, looks good. Okay, we're going to get the backhoe back on. Just got this 3-point bucket off here, and take off the lower control arms, take off the upper adjustable top link, and so now it's ready for the backhoe. I took this off on Friday. Today's Sunday, so it's been 2 days. You can see everything's settled. It's on the ground now, and what we're gonna have to do is back up here with these lower hooks that hook up underneath here. They're gonna be too high, so they're gonna be up here. What we're gonna have to do is plug the hydraulics in, lift this up, and then back the tractor again underneath these. Okay, so a little bit of a kind of a little bit harder task with one person. I mean, it just takes a little bit longer, but it's very doable. All right, let's do it. Okay, so here's the step. You just got to kind of take your time and make sure you get it aligned right. Go slow. Basically, you're putting your, if you have a drawbar sticking out, you're putting it right in the middle of that. So that's kind of what I'm eyeballing to try to get me lined up to begin with. Then once I get close, you want to be squared off with the hoe as well, with the brackets on the hoe. So I'll lean back and I'll actually line up this bar right here with the back of the backhoe, like those two cross pieces, just to see if they're aligned. And if they're aligned there, that means I'm good this way. Now I'll just try to keep that drawbar right in the middle as I come back and not make any super crazy aggressive moves. And we should be pretty close. Now as I get closer, I'm still looking at the drawbar, but I'm also looking at the tires. You can see how the drawbar is not quite in the middle. And I know that because it's about to hit this tire over here, but there's a big gap over here. So I'm going to pull forward, and we're just going to do it again real quick. So I'm going to pull forward, come a little bit. So here I'm lining up the dry bar in my mind with those hoses right there. And so that should get me pretty close once I get my tires close. I'm still pretty squared up. Not quite as squared as I'd like to be, but you got a little bit of wiggle room, so don't worry too much. You don't have a lot of wiggle room though, so we're gonna get pretty close here. Okay, right there is gonna allow me to lift the back of the backhoe up and get those cross pieces above the hooks. All right, let's get it plugged in. Okay, one. I'll turn the hydraulics on, and we're gonna now see how it's raising and it's crooked, it's rubbing against the tire here. This one's actually going to be okay. We can fix that pretty easily by just moving the boom side to side, and that'll kind of shift this a little bit back here. You don't have a lot of wiggle room that you can do that with, but you have some. So right now the goal is just to get these above the hooks, which is about right there. Now I'm going to move the boom a little bit to try to shift this that direction. So let's see what happens here. I might move it the wrong direction to start with. Yep. Okay, so that kind of walks it a little bit. Now we're going to back it up and try to get this one underneath this. Okay, so now real carefully, got my foot on the brake and one on the gas. I'm going to put a little bit of left turn in to try to pull this side that way faster. We're going to come back just a little bit here, watching the hydraulic hoses, making sure we don't pinch anything. Okay, and that's pretty good. I'm going to set my brake right there. So hopefully we won't move. Now you can see when I lower it into those, that's going to hit that right there. So we've got to move the boom toward us a little bit. Okay. Now we're going to lower the legs. We're going to lower the right one. Now we're going to lower the left one over here. And it's just hitting. Now let's lower this left leg. So that one's in place. This right one's, you can see the edge is up on top there. And this one's sort of in the middle. So these will end up right against this. So we're going to move the boom the opposite direction. Okay, so now we've got the cross pins right here above the hooks. Same thing there. It's a little bit hard to see from over here, but it looks about right. Now what we're going to do is just lower the stabilizing legs on the sides. We're going to lower this one first. And the idea is to try, as you lower them, try to keep this real close to that. Hopefully that's coming out in the camera. This hook needs to be real close to the inside of the frame right there. Okay, now let's do the other side. We're going to lower it a little bit. And now we're hitting right there. See that? So we're going to raise the boom. We're going to bring the boom up toward us, which is going to allow this part to tilt that way. So we're going to bring the boom a little bit toward us. So now that should clear right there. Now we're going to drop that in. Okay, we're going to drop this one in. Okay, good. So now that we have the lower cross pins inside the hooks in the bottom, we just have to raise this back into here. Okay, and how we do that is we're going to push the boom down, which is going to raise this part up. So as we push the boom right there down, it's going to raise the middle of this up like this, because it's going to try to pivot on this as the boom pushes down there. So what we're going to do is push the boom away from us, which is this control right here. We're just going to watch here. And we'll put them all the way in the back like that, so it raises it up a little bit, nicely engaged. We're going to take our little pins here. Drop them in place. Cool thing about these pins is they'll never loosen up because of their tapered design. And they still come out super easy. Oh, can I reach it? And like I said before, these two pins are the only thing that hold this backhoe in place. That's all that's needed. Let's go ahead and raise the feet. Now we can go ahead and raise the boom. And now we'll curl the stick toward us. That'll just make it a little safer while we drive. Okay, we don't have far to go, so let's go get to work. Okay, so as far as the hydraulics go, you know, this plugs into the rear hydraulics right there. So those hoses, of course, come down. They go to a distribution manifold here so that the controls, no hydraulic fluid is flowing through any of these until you pull one of the controls or push one of the controls, right? Nothing goes through any of these cylinders until that happens. Now, these lower cylinders here, there's one right over here on this side, there's one right here. You can look at the one on the other side over here. And what those do, those are attached to the bottom of the boom. So these are actually what make the boom swivel left and right. Okay, so when you move the stick left and right for the boom stick, you move that left and right. That's what these hydraulic cylinders are do. This one pushes this way, moves the boom left. That one pushes, when that one extends, it pushes the boom to the right. Okay, and then of course the boom, when you extend the boom out this way or you retract it and pull it back up straight, that's this hydraulic cylinder right here. It's attached there, and that's what pulls the boom up and down. Now this cylinder right here, the second cylinder is attached here and to the top here, and this is the stick, right? This is just one continuous piece of steel right here that's attached to the top of the stick. So when this one retracts, the stick, it goes straight, right? But when this one extends, it pushes that over, which makes the stick come toward you, okay? Simple as that. And the same with this hydraulic cylinder here on this side. This is the one that operates the bucket. And you can see if it shortens here, it's gonna pull the bucket back. And if it extends here, it's gonna cause the bucket to curl, okay? So that's all your controls are doing. You're operating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hydraulic cylinders with these two controls here. And of course these two middle controls are for the feet, and that just causes these hydraulic cylinders to extend or retract as well, and they just pivot there and there. Okay, now I just tie these up while this is inside my tractor barn. I don't want these falling out as the hydraulic pressure changes, and sometimes they'll relax and the hydraulic fluids will shift inside and these will fall out onto the ground, and I don't want that happening. I don't want them falling out and hitting the wall. I don't think they quite would, but then I have to get in the back if I want to move the tractor out, hook them, you know, flip the power onto the hydraulics, the rear hydraulics, and then lift them back up. And so it's just easier just to tie them with a little strap. Same thing here. This one has a pin that goes in right here. This pin goes all the way through to the other side and sticks out right there. And what that does is that keeps the boom from falling out this way, and this bucket ending up on the ground, which will happen over a few days. And there's also this pin, which I did not engage. This keeps the boom from flipping side to side. You just lift this up and then rotate this, and then it drops down inside. Of course, it's not lined up. It's not going to drop down inside. You can see my boom's crooked. And that's just since I parked it here. I had it pretty straight, but just since it's been sitting here, the hydraulic fluid has shifted a little bit and the boom's kind of settled over here. It hasn't swung all the way over, but that's something I probably should have just engaged just to keep it straight, especially if it's sitting for a few days. You know, so not too complicated. The maintenance on it is pretty simple. I try to keep the hydraulic cylinder arms wiped off, so also there's tons and tons of grease zerks, and you just got to pay attention to these. Keep these nice and lubed, because not only will your backhoe get noisy and squeaky as the grease gets pushed out and then it's metal on metal, it'll get real squeaky. It'll still move, but it doesn't move as fluidly or as smoothly, especially if it's metal on metal. So just keep these lubed. I lubricate it. I don't use this a ton, so I'm probably lubricating it real heavily once a year. I've lubricated it twice this year because I've used it a bunch this fall. And there's just grease zerks everywhere. There's one there, there's one there, there's one there. There's one there, one there, one there, one there. And it has to be this way. And there's several up here, some on the top, some on the sides. And there's even grease zerks, of course, every pivot point. So if you think about this, it's pretty simple. Anything that can pivot will have a grease zerk, okay? Even these right here. So these feet you have to lower to get to that grease zerk because there's no way to get to it with it sitting in this position. This one up here you can get to, it's right there. But there's also grease zerks on this side of this hydraulic cylinder and also on the back side of this hydraulic cylinder. Underneath here, let's look underneath here. So there's a grease zerk on that back hinge point as well. Now those don't get a ton of movement. The ones that do get a ton of movement are these right here. Grease zerks are on the bottom there and on the bottom there. And a lot of times you have to clean them out because they're full of dirt. Clean them out with a screwdriver, wipe them off the rag, then connect your grease zerk adapter to them and get them greased up. Now I was doing this by hand with a hand grease gun, and it was taking an hour. And it really sucked. It was a pain in the butt. Trying to hold this thing on here and then pump the grease, because this didn't stay on. This would pop off, so you had to manually hold it on, and then with the other hand pump your grease. Squeeze, 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 and it was a real pain. And that's when my grease gun worked. It was a pain. When it didn't work, it was super frustrating. So I haven't counted the grease zerks, but there's a bunch on here. One of my buddies the other day was mentioning how many grease zerks he had on his grapple, and he said there's like 51 or something, and then he's like, there's not that many, but it's a bunch. And so I actually counted the ones on this backhoe. There's 24 grease zerks, grease points, and maybe I missed one or two, but that's what I typically grease is 24. If we're looking at the loader up here, there's even more. Now there's not many on the chassis. There's 3 chassis points that I grease, this end, that end, and then there's a grease zerk right in the middle there. But as far as the hydraulic cylinders on this loader go, you know, 1, 2, there's one on the end of each hydraulic cylinder. There's these pivot points, 3. This hydraulic cylinder has 4, 5, and then there's 6, 7, and 8. And that's 8 on one side, so 16 just on the loader, 17, 18, 19. So 19 and 24 is 43 grease points that I found. And there may be more. I may just be missing a couple. But that's a lot of, you know, when you're using the manual grease gun, you push it in, you're squeezing it, and it takes time. And so, you know, one of my buddies also we were working on his trailer for 2 or 3 days, getting some things done. Just as a thank you gift, he gave me this DeWalt, and this was not cheap, I'm sure, but this DeWalt grease gun. I love this thing. This is the best tool, I think. This tool makes me the happiest. I mean, I have a lot of tools that I really enjoy. This tool makes me the happiest because of the frustration it saves me and the time it saves me. So I don't get frustrated. I go, you know, I'm not tired after an hour of trying to grease just the tractor. I'm doing the tractor, the whole thing in 15 minutes with this thing right here. Now there's 2 things that make that possible. This thing is super high pressure. The grease cartridge is going easy. It primes easily. I have yet to get frustrated with it because it has an air pocket and I can't get grease to come out the end. It always works. And I put probably 4 or 5 grease cartridges through it now. I think I just put my 5th one in the other day because I bought a case of them. And the other thing that makes it great is this thing right here, lock and lube. Okay, so this thing, you squeeze it back, it allows you to push this on your grease zerk to let it go, and it locks it on there, so you're not manually having to hold it on there. Now it's pretty easy to hold it on there just by hand because you're just pulling a trigger with this grease gun, but at the same time that makes it easy. It's guaranteed to stay tight, and grease is going in. Okay, let's just demonstrate real quick how this thing works. Okay, so we'll just look at the battery here. It's got 2 bars, it says. So this thing's lasted a long time, and basically it just has a little trigger lockout. You can lock the trigger out if you want, but I just leave it on all the time. And then when you squeeze it, grease comes out. Simple as that. Whew, that was dusty. So what I'm going to do is just wipe this grease zerk off right here, just to get so I'm not driving dirt inside of it. And I try to clean off around the grease zerk as well, so that the adapter grabs it easily. So let's just look and see how this works. So I'm just going to pull this back like this and slide it over the grease zerk and then let it go, and then you like literally can't pull it off. It's on there. Okay, so where we're looking for grease to come out now is right there, and maybe we'll see it. So I'm going to pull the trigger here. So there's grease coming out right there. We know what's going to the other side, and there's grease pouring out right here. That's a bunch of grease it just packed through there, right? So that's awesome. Then pop, go to the next one. Now the hose isn't super long. I guess you could put a longer hose on it, but this is long enough, and this thing's light enough. If you're doing this, especially with this tool, you know, you put this on here, you're not having to hold that on there. It goes on that easy, right? And then we're going to grease this one. Let's see. We should see grease come out on the sides there. Okay. And take it off. Pops off easy as it doesn't get jammed on there. It doesn't get stuck on there. You're not fighting to get it off. It just slips right off. This thing is, I can't remember. It seems like it was $20 or $30 this piece, but it is well worth it in the frustration it'll save you, and in the speed it'll speed you up. I mean, you can do other stuff. So this investment in this, I probably would not have bought this had he not given this to me. So I'm so thankful for him giving this to me as a gift. I so appreciate it, because this is, like I said, it's got to be my favorite tool as far as the tool that makes me the happiest. Just because it saves me so much time when I'm greasing the Jeep, or I'm greasing other implements that have grease zerks on them. It just goes so fast, and it's not a pain. It's not something I put off because I don't want to do it because it's frustrating and it's time consuming. It's easy to do, so I'm greasing more. And so what's the best kind of grease to use? the grease that you actually use. So, you know, you can buy the super expensive greases and whatever and put them in not very often. This thing, you could use cheap grease. Now I'm using a grease with a, I mean, you could use cheap grease and put it in a lot, and if it has a low drop point and it's dripping out all the time and it's, you know, breaking down quickly, if you're using a lot, this just makes it easy, you know. So I'm not using a super expensive grease. I'm not using the cheapest. I'm using the Shell Rotella. It's a high pressure grease, and I buy it in the case at Tractor Supply, and it's worked really well. And so this started squeaking on me, and I don't know exactly where the squeak was while I was using it a couple weeks ago. And so I kind of finished what I was doing. I brought it over here. I greased this whole thing in less than 15 minutes. I mean, I was done and back to work, and the squeak was gone. So I was saving myself wear and tear by getting rid of that squeak. It went quick because of this thing, and worthwhile investment. I'm super happy with this tool. And then I usually just come back where all this grease is pouring out, take my finger, get it up inside as far as I can, wipe out what I can, get rid of it. I can't really reach much up inside there. I'll get rid of a little bit of that. And that just keeps less dust and less dirt from sticking to it. It's a tractor. It's going to have, you know, the grease is going to leak out. Even if you wipe it all off perfectly, it's going to leak out some, because every grease has a drop point, and it's going to start coming out a little bit, and it's going to collect dirt. That's just part of it. So that's just part of tractor life, right? It's going to be kind of messy. But wiping it off around the edges does kind of help minimize how much dirt it collects.